Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. So, if you guys remember, I made a video talking about how EA had laid off about 400 employees recently, and 100 or so of those employees came from Respawn Entertainment. But we are finding out who the other studios are that are being affected, and one of them is Codemasters. So, Codemasters recently announced that they were no longer going to be making, at least for the time being anyway, they were pausing development of their World Rally Championship video games. They were not going to make any more. And apparently, now, a few days later, we have found out the reason why that is. It's because EA is actually firing a lot of people over at Codemasters and also taking some people and moving them over to other parts of EA. There is a massive restructure that is happening for this company, and we're going to talk about it. So let's get into this article, guys, from Eurogamer. But of course, before we do, if you are new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and like the video to push us out into that YouTube algorithm as we are on our way to 90,000 subscribers. So we got EA confirms that it is reducing roles, and again, they try to use the most lightest way possible in order to get their point across at Codemasters and redeploying as many as possible. As a business, we are constantly evolving to meet the growing needs of our players. And again, this has nothing to do with meeting the growing needs of players. This has everything to do to make sure that investors are as happy as possible, because the money is not coming in, but the money is most definitely going out. And they're now trying to get as many people to leave or either fire them or whatever in order to try to save money on payroll, because quite frankly, the subsidization is not there anymore. It says days after announcing that it was pausing development on all future games in its World Rally Championship, EA has confirmed that it has reduced some roles at Codemasters. And again, they're using very vague terms, very vague language, because they don't want to be super specific. See, here's the problem. They have to announce this stuff because, quite frankly, they're a public companies, so they have to announce certain information. And whenever they announce this stuff, they try to make it with such a PR spin, because they got to make it sound as negligible as possible, let's just say, even though we all know it's not negligible, even though we all know this is going to be huge over at Codemasters, just like Respawn Entertainment losing 100 of their employees is also huge. At the end of the day, they're going to try to make it seem as small as humanly possible. So EA announced at the end of its partnership with the World Rally Championship earlier this week. At the time, it was not clear if or how many members of the Codemasters team had been impacted. However, in a statement to the VGC, EA again did not confirm the number of its colleagues affected, but did acknowledge the following. As a business, we are constantly evolving to meet the growing needs of our players and driving greater focus across our portfolio. This has led us to look at reducing some roles while we redeploy as many as possible against our strategic priorities, the statement concluded. So they said the same thing when they shuttered BioWare Edmonton. They said the same exact thing, right? That they were trying to redeploy people that were at that studio, and that they're trying to offer as many people a job as possible. But ultimately, what ended up happening was the majority of people got fired, right? A massive amount of people got laid off from BioWare because of what happened with Dragon Age: The Veilguard. It was basically only a matter of time. You know, we have this tracker that we've been utilizing for a while now, at least for a couple of weeks, that now this number is up to 2,200 people laid off in 2025 alone. And the amazing thing about all this is that this is not even accurate, right? This is actually pretty low, because there are studios where here you see Mighty Yell, right? Question mark. It's because they never announced how many people they laid off. They never told people how many they laid off. And there are a bunch of studios here in this list that showcase question marks. So we actually don't know how many people were laid off from these companies. Look at all these question marks here. So this 2,200 number is only there because of the confirmed number of layoffs that we have on this spreadsheet. So in all actuality, this number is probably up to about 2,500, if not even close to 3,000 people laid off at this point in time. And Codemasters is going to be one of them that goes in that list as a question mark, right? So it says EA's decision to end its championship partnership follows its announcement last year, made as it laid off 670 employees that it will be moving away from future licensed IP towards its owned IP sports and massive online communities. The WRC news followed yet more layoffs at EA, reportedly affecting between 300 and 400 employees who also lost their jobs earlier this week. That means around 2,200 developers have lost their job in the first 4 months of 2025 alone. So now I don't know how successful these games were, to be honest with you. I don't know how big of a player base these WRC video games had. I gotta imagine they probably weren't massive, right? I gotta imagine that while it is, a licensed IP, that the IP itself, video game wise, is probably not that huge, to the point where a company like EA didn't seem like it was worth value to keep around, right? The reason why they're getting rid of the license is because they don't see any value in it. If they did, they would definitely keep it around, regardless of whether or not they want to focus on their own owned IPs or whatever online communities. That's just a cop out, right? That entire statement is an excuse for them to get rid of licensed IPs that they've been wanting to get rid of for a while, probably, and now they see an opportunity to do so, and they're going to take it. I don't know who's going to take over this IP now that EA has let it go, but I'm sure somebody will take over the Rally IP. Now, in terms of the overall EA, situation in general, you got to imagine that this is only going to be the beginning of what's going to be more layoffs by the end of the year. I got to imagine that EA is probably going to be laying off more people by the end of 2025. This is pretty much only the beginning. And also, to keep in mind, we've already lost about 600 plus people in a previous firing that happened late last year. It's amazing to me that this all first started off with them announcing the pausing of development. EA says it's pausing development on future Rally games as WRC partnership ends. How are you pausing development? Wait. How are you? I just thought about this. How are you pausing development? Pausing means that you plan to restart development at some point. But if you are ending the WRC partnership, then you're not pausing the development. You are ending the development indefinitely. Like, you are not going to return back to the WRC. But again, this is just EA trying to do PR speak. They're trying to always leave the door open for anything being possible. They want to use as vague of speech as possible in order to try to garner the best favor whenever they release bad news like this. But they started off announcing that they're pausing development, and then a week later, they're announcing Codemasters is suffering massive layoffs. So again, anytime you see these comments made by companies like this, I'm sure you guys already know this, but I have to say it anyway, always take it as bullshit, because there is always something deeper here to see. There's always something deeper to find, and Codemasters is just another example of another studio that is being shuttered. Well, not really shuttered, but it's being hurt pretty bad in the year of 2025, and it's all because of the lack of subsidization. I gotta imagine, are these games available on Steam? Let me check. All right, so this game is in fact available on Steam, and as expected, not many people are playing this game. It had an all-time peak 1.5 years ago of 4,538 players, with players playing right now in the amount of 811. So not many people are playing this game, number one. Number two, it got crucified, wow, on reviews. I could only imagine if I were to read some of these reviews how bad they would actually be, but they got crucified, okay? 61% positive with an almost 40% negative review ratio. That is terrible. Ultimately, this game clearly did not have the level of players that it needed. Exactly what I thought. They didn't. I couldn't imagine a WRC game being so massive. And again, even if it was, I don't see how that could be true, considering that EA wants to give it up. If EA wants to give you up, you are not worth anything, quite frankly, which is why I'm kind of shocked they haven't given up BioWare yet, considering BioWare has released like 3 flops in a row now at this point. But they're hoping that Mass Effect just kicks off. Their live service Mass Effect just kicks off. But regardless, the WRC game from EA, clearly not that big of a hit, and definitely has overstayed its welcome, and it's unfortunate. Now, I wonder what's going to happen with the game. Are they going to keep supporting it? That's what I'm curious about. Are they going to keep supporting it? Is it a live service only kind of a game? Online only? I don't know. I don't know anything about these games, so I'm very curious what's going to go on here, and if EA is going to continue supporting it, even though they're pausing development on the games in general in terms of making new ones. I guess we're going to have to wait and find out. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you did enjoy it. And if you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I will greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.